Can you see me shaking in the dark? I test the air, you hit your mark. You throw a line to me, and boy, you rarely miss. You pull me back again and hit me with...
Hello everyone! Today I have a special guest named
Echo, Gillette.
We're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects in the whole wide world, spectrums.
A fist.
We've recorded this like 2 other times.
Unfortunately, we have tried to film this 2 other times, but circumstance has been against us.
We're like experts on spectrums is what we're saying.
Basically, you're in for a treat.
We know everything.
You're welcome. Which brings me to my first question. What is a spectrum?
Okay, a spectrum, it accounts for variation between 2 points. So it allows for like a range and like gray space between 2 maybe otherwise binary things.
Yeah, that's super cool. The only amendment I would make is that your explanation just had a lot of focus on 2, and that's certainly like traditional spectrums.
Yeah, so it can be linear, but it can also be like, it can be in multiple directions. So it can have like multiple points.
Multiple points. Yeah, just the range between things.
Yeah.
And often...
That's a good way to put it, is like a range between things.
I am going to read the official definition from my book.
Essentially, spectrums are tools or concepts that help us understand identities in complex ways. Oftentimes, we see them as visual aids on which we can represent and plot different identities. They can be simple or really get messy and fun. For example, did that overwhelm you? Not to worry. We'll break down spectrum making quite a bit in this video.
One of the things that I had realized was that mental health can be on a spectrum.
Yes.
Which is very nice to take into account because different people can have like depression or anxiety to different degrees, and it lets them realize that they will still need help for it. Another thing that I realized could also be on a spectrum is like disabilities.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe how much you're affected by your disability could
Yeah.
exist on a spectrum, or like how visible your disability could
that's a
exist
big one.
on a spectrum. Annie talks a lot about this on their channel because sometimes they use their wheelchair and sometimes they don't, but they're still Annie in either situation and they still have their disability. So yeah, like how visible that could be could certainly exist on a spectrum. That's cool.
Yeah.
What are some of the identities like in the LGBT community that can exist on a spectrum?
Well, asexuality, for starters, is one of the very big ones that I feel like a lot of people think about in terms of a spectrum, because it's like an intensity, I almost want to say, is like how I like to look at it, of like how much sexual attraction you experience.
So then same with aromanticism.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the romantic spectrums too. Bisexuality, like the type of genders that you're attracted to, like those could easily be on a spectrum as well. I feel like spectrums help to eliminate that, like, I don't feel this word enough to take on that label.
Exactly. It's validating because it's like if you're on the spectrum, then you're a part of the community.
Yeah.
Also gender, how you identify your gender can exist on a spectrum. And then also like the intensity that you feel your gender can be like another layer to your spectrum. Also, so we could put like demisexuality on a spectrum too, because it could be like under what conditions do you experience attraction? And then maybe one end of the spectrum would be like I can be attracted to strangers, and the other one would be like I need to form the strongest emotional bond. And then you could like identify yourself somewhere on there. You can also put how polyamorous or not you are on a spectrum.
I feel like you could put it for you and your relationship too, because relationships could also be on a spectrum.
That's super, super true. Yeah,
like with how comfortable you are together versus like individually.
Yeah. So a lot of the spectrums that we just talked about we had a pretty big focus on things being linear. Yeah. But spectrums, I would say even more often than not, aren't linear. What are some of the other shapes they can take?
Well, they could, it depends on how many points you want to add. So it could go infinitely to the point where it's just a circle.
If I personally had to put gender on a spectrum, it would be a circle. And then
I like this diagram a lot.
And then there would be this black space around the circle for no gender. And then if you were agender, you could even leave the diagram.
Yeah. Like, I loved that about this, because it's like, you just have this thing out here. It's wonderful. It's perfect. I love it when people do stuff outside of the box like that. You could also make it like multidimensional. You could bring it out into like a sphere or a box. And And you can also like throw in the time element too, because people's sexuality and
Changes.
gender can move and change.
If you're like crafting all these treasure maps or like blueprints or linear spectrums or circular spectrums or whatever, and you just still feel so confined because there's all these rules, you could make art. You could just be really abstract. I'm gonna put on the screen a piece of art that is featured in my book that somebody made to like
the pretty purple one.
Yes,
Yes,
made
I like
to
that.
represent them. Yeah, Charlie made this. It's really, really cool. And I know that traditionally it wouldn't be considered a spectrum, but like again, you don't have to follow the rules. And spectrums don't even have to exist visually. They can also be conceptual.
Oh, I really like this because this is I'm a very visual person, so this is not something that I would have thought about.
You can only show so much visually. Just like the size of your piece of paper gives you like a rule or a limitation. So if we just extend it to our mind, it kind of like opens up a lot of doors. So there is a comic in my book that kind of illustrates why something might exist on a conceptual spectrum.
Gender exists on a spectrum, did you know?
Yes, between men and women, right?
Actually, it goes even beyond that.
Oh, really? That's cool. Could you draw the spectrum for me?
It's a little more complicated than that. New genders are being understood and discovered every day. So it's kind of infinite and always changing. Drawing it might not do the gender spectrum justice, but just know that gender exists in various types and degrees of intensity. I'd be happy to discuss some of them with you.
Yeah, I'd like that.
And now we have entered my favorite part of the collab. I have asked Echo to draw their spectrum. Now that we've discussed all these things and we've explored all the different ways a spectrum can look and what you can put on it, I was like, do it. Become a spectrum. And Echo did.
So, in terms of like my sexuality, personally I identify as like a pan-gray asexual, but generally when I want to try and convey my sexuality, I just tell people that I'm asexual just because I feel like people are more likely to understand it if I give them a single word. And then if they want to know more, then I can give them like a more complex definition of my identity.
You kind of establish like how interested they are or how safe the space is.
Yeah,
before
and how much they're going to understand.
Right.
Because there are still people who don't understand asexuality at all. So I have made this kind of spectrum that has the multiple identities that asexuality has. Asexuality kind of describes like an intensity, like how much sexual attraction you feel. Generally, like just asexual is like not attracted to anyone at all.
That is, if you're referring to asexual as a standalone identifier all the way to one end of the spectrum. Asexual can also be a broader identity under the ace umbrella. It refers to someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction. There is wiggle room and variety in the term asexual. As you saw earlier in this video, after all, Echo used it to refer to herself, although she does experience some sexual attraction. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Just asexual is like not attracted to anyone at all. Someone who's gray asexual is on that spectrum.
Grey sexuality, or grey asexuality, refers to people who experience very low amounts of sexual attraction, people who experience attraction very rarely or only under certain circumstances, or people not sure whether they experience attraction. This is where that might fall on a spectrum.
So that's kind of what this is based. If you were asexual, you'd be like right in the center. And the outer rim is more Z-sexual or allosexual. Which one do you prefer?
I like Z.
Check out the extra video on the second channel to learn why. Otherwise, Z-sexual and allosexual mean the same thing. These terms do not fall under the ace umbrella. They refer to people who do experience sexual attraction, aka people who are not ace.
So when you're asexual, if you're gray asexual, then you can start branching out into like what genders you're attracted to. Because if you experience slight sexual attraction, then you can start like kind of trying to break it up into like, okay, I am also pansexual or bisexual or straight or gay or lesbian or any of the other like multiple labels that might apply to you.
Right.
In terms of the spectrum, this is kind of where I personally fall with like these white boxes. So on this I've included pansexual, and I've kind of made it so that it can go in a spectrum between like lesbian and heterosexual for me. So like if a male person wanted to do this, then they could change the lesbian flag to something else if they wanted to.
They could make it like gay or
yeah,
whatever.
they could put like just the rainbow flag or something.
Right.
Okay, so on the spectrum, I've gone ahead and I've drawn like some boxes that show where I kind of fall on the spectrum that I've designed, and I classify myself as like pansexual, but I feel like generally I'm more attracted to men. But I've also included...
Which is why you're leaning towards heterosexual.
Yes, that's why I've gone ahead and kind of like drawn it like drifting towards heterosexual. And then I've also included gynephilia and androphilia flags, because I feel like although I am sometimes more attracted to men, I'm more attracted to feminine people in general. Gynephilia, as far as my understanding is, it is an attraction to femininity, and androphilia is an attraction to masculinity.
Yeah.
When, like, my sexuality was first developing, I was far more attracted to women than I was to men.
Okay.
And it's just slowly shifted over as I've gotten older.
Do you have a theory for why?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's because I've realized that men can also be feminine.
Because maybe you were misinterpreting your gynephilia. Maybe you were being like, I'm attracted to femininity. Well, that means girls.
Women, you're right. Only women can be feminine.
And then you grew up and you're like, well, no, men can be kind of feminine too. And I like it.
Yeah. This was a thing that I was just like thinking about in terms of applying this to like my past and bringing in the fourth dimension of time.
Yeah.
This is how it was. So if I could turn this into an animation, then it would go like...
Oh, cool. You could totally animate your spectrum to bring in time. I'm going to put Echo's like blank spectrum. I'm going to put like a link to the download or the file or something in the description. And if you want to plot yourself on it and then like tweet it to us, that would be so fun. This can be like a new spectrum that maybe helps people, or you can just try it or whatever. I think that could be really neat.
And I've also sent you the various layers, so if they want to, they can change out the flags. If there's something like lesbian they feel like won't apply to them at all, they could change it out for something else that wouldn't make more sense for them.